Hello there, America, and welcome to Mox News. My name is Jacob D'Andrea.
And I'm Victor Kim.
And we will be your hosts for tonight.
It's currently December 31st, 1989, a few minutes before the turn of the new decade and we approach the 1990s.
Indeed it is. I'm quite excited. I'm going to actually marry my wife soon.
Oh, really? Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And tonight we'll be looking at the top 10 events that happened in the 1980s. The first major event that happened was Ronald Reagan winning the 1981 elections and being inaugurated as the 40th President of the United States. Ronald Reagan defeated the incumbent Jimmy Carter by winning 90% of the electoral college and getting 50% of the popular vote, while Jimmy Carter only got 41% of the vote. Ronald Reagan, a staunch conservative, would bring a new era of Republican values and introduce the world to Reaganomics. He also increased defense spending by 35% and pressured the Soviet Union to end the Cold War and forced diplomatic relationship with Mikhail Gorbachev. Dirty Russian, right?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan's foreign policy was peace through strength, which unlike Jimmy Carter's was more an aggressive foreign policy. Ronald Reagan served as President of the United States from 1981 to 1989.
Man, Reagan. Who didn't love that guy?
I know, I love that man. Still do.
On March 23rd, in 1983, Ronald Reagan announced the start of the Strategic Defense Initiative, or the SDI for short. He stated that it was a missile defense system intended to protect the United States from attack by ballistic strategic nuclear weapons, in which a combination of ground-based units like the Extended Range Interceptor and orbital deployment platforms like Brilliant Pebbles would be deployed to destroy their targets mid-flight.
Yes, and fun fact, that actually had a nickname of Star Wars.
Oh, really?
I actually really love that movie.
George Lucas.
Yes. Good film producer. Now, in 1983, Mikhail Gorbachev, the General Secretary of the Communist Party, and some of you at home might be familiar with Gorbachev because beloved President Ronald Reagan became very close friends with the man. Very interesting because they're polar opposites on the economic and political spectrum. In 1983, the following 3 years would come to be filled with Gorbachev and Reagan getting very, very friendly with each other, despite, like we said before, politically and economically on the opposite sides of each other.
Russia and the U.S.
I know, we didn't expect this, especially at the height of this Cold War we're having.
Yeah.
This would eventually leading to both sides discussing ways to bring an end to the Cold War. Damn right. Of course, initially our president was distrustful of the communists, and to be honest, who wouldn't? It goes to show, even though we may be drastically different views with the communists, we all just want an end to the fighting.
Alright, I'll give you that, communists. Alright. At least you have some sense.
I know, some humanity.
Back in 1983, in the fall of October up until December, we had Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada. America had invaded Grenada because their leftist New Jewel movement seemed good by the Grenadians in 1979. The invasion started 2 days after the bombing of American barracks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
The invasion was mostly seen favorably, and the head of government was replaced by Governor General Paul Scoon until he was replaced in elections in 1984. Criticized by the UK, Canada, and the US, we had vetoed the UN resolution that would see it as a breach of international law. US students in nearby universities could have been taken hostage like Iran hostages. Thankfully, the US decided to rescue the students who later completed their degrees in America.
Damn right.
7.6K American troops versus 1.5K-ish Grenada, 722 Cuban, and 24 North Korean.
Where did the North Koreans come from?
All I know is that 7.6K is a bigger number than wherever the other numbers were.
Yeah, nah.
Who needs it? American soldiers received 5,000 plus medals for merit and valor, even though most of them spent their time sunbathing. Well-deserved medals, I suppose.
I guess, yeah. Who knows?
They got deployed.
Yeah, they got deployed.
Grenadian soldiers were workers and soldiers at the same time. The U.S. had called in battalion reinforcements, air support, and naval bombardments. With massive communication difficulties, soldiers did not know students were at two separate campuses. Soldiers had worse maps than the tourist maps on sale.
Wow.
US soldiers killed by their own support, and when bad maps led them to call in air and naval strikes on their own positions.
Wow.
The whole invasion, of course, was just a media show for the US to try and regain its lost prestige after losing wars to what her people saw as inferior foes, so that they could still try and look like a real superpower. It's all about how good we look to the others, right?
Yeah, it is. And we still do look pretty good.
Yeah,
Biggest
right.
superpower out there. Now, during this time, the Soviets weren't doing so well at all. Well, at least in an economic sense. Matters took a turn for the worse in '86 when a reactor had, well, gone through a meltdown. Like my wife. Of course, I'm speaking of Chernobyl, at the power plant over there in Ukraine. Terrible, terrible time that was for all of them. We have been told that the cause of the incident was when an unexpected power surge that led to a failed emergency shutdown, which led to an exponentially large power spike occurred, which had then led to the reactor vessel to rupture when a series of steam explosions. Which of course led to having all those fun radioactive particles
Love those.
into the atmosphere and the surrounding area, setting the very air itself on fire. That's scary.
Fun
Out of a
times.
horror movie. 31 lives were lost on the spot, while the more long-term effects of cancer are still under investigation. The battle to contain the accident cost over 500,000 workers and an estimate cost of 18 billion Russian rubles, and in our currency, that's 326 American dollars.
American dollars.
Now, I'm no economist, but I would call that a rather large sum of money, especially at the time when the Soviets weren't doing well economically, wasting 18 billion rubles. Would you not agree?
326 million, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair amount of money.
Yeah. Looks like the Soviets just can't catch a break.
Oh, well, that's what they get for being communist.
Exactly.
Now, there was a secret agreement in the 1980s to fund Nicaraguan rebels. Money was raised by selling arms to Iran, which most of it went to Contras to help fight guerrilla war against the Sandinista government, which the US wanted rid of because they were leftists. The weapons went to Iran, which would help secure the release of US hostages. Originally, arms were sold to Israel, who sold them to Iran, but Oliver North Military Aid suggested to directly sell them to Iran and adding a 15 million markup, followed by a 41% markup by a weapons dealer.
Wow.
Iran at first refused due to the markups, but then later gave in and bought. The deal was approved behind Reagan's back.
Yeah.
Originally sold to moderate Iranian groups, it was changed to moderate Iranian army groups.
What's the difference? Who knows?
The deal was highly illegal and technically treason. In 1986, the media found out and ensured total coverage. Oliver North, however, took the fall to spare Reagan the admin. Thanks to Oliver North's secretary, the addicting documents were destroyed, allowing Oliver, and to a lesser extent, the Reagan admin, to avoid a list of charges. High treason amongst one of them. Thank you, Oliver North.
Yeah, I still like Reagan, even though it all came out. Yeah. Now, I'd like to apologize ahead of time. There's an Icelandic name, and, well, I'm American, not Icelandic. October 12th in 1986, in Hufini, Reykjavik, Iceland, U.S. President Ronald Reagan had a meeting with the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. Both parties were here to discuss the continuation of the research of the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI, for the elimination of nuclear weapons. Talks had broken down after disagreement between the two. Gorbachev had proposed to stop ballistic missile research, and that is where both parties could not match an agreement. Through back and forth between the two, Reagan tried his best to see a deal for the continuation of the research of ballistic missiles for the next 10 years, but Gorbachev was quick to reject the U.S. president's demands. Research of the ballistic missiles were known to be essential in the progress of the SDI, and an agreement could not be made to rid of all nuclear weapons, but fortunately, the disagreement eventually resulted in the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Force Treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union. Thank God, because maybe we might have used that against each other.
Yeah.
we wouldn't be here right now.
No. Back in December in '87, that was a glorious day when U.S. President Ronald Reagan and General Secretary, the Communist Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Union, signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, eliminating nuclear and conventional ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles with intermediate ranges. On June 1st, under the treaty, a total of 2,692 of such weapons were destroyed, 846 by the U.S. and 1,846 by the Soviet Union.
Oh wow, thank God, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was quite a large event, and in fact, one of our producers here at the show were actually there. This is, of course, what I'm talking about is the Berlin Wall when it fell. On November 9th of 1989 at 10:45 p.m., the East Germans had gathered around the Berlin Wall due to an ever-growing tension between the East Germans and the communist government. They were protesting at 6 checkpoints that divided Berlin into 2. The guards were trying their best to round up the aggressors and managed to get them out in an attempt to calm the protesters, but the protesters vastly outnumbered them, and they continued to riot and forced the guards, who were greatly outnumbered, as previously said, to decide to open the checkpoints and let people through with little to no identity checks. This was an incredible moment at the time where we witnessed a great overturning of the communists for the first time. Now, finally, at George H.W. Bush, which was Ronald Reagan's vice president and became the 41st President of the United States on January 20th, 1989. George Bush won the election with 53.4% of the popular vote, defeating the Democratic nominee Michael Dukakis. Who cares? He didn't win.
Yeah. Non-Americans.
No one even knows who he really is, actually.
Yeah.
So far, foreign policy became the main driver of the Bush's presidency, and right now it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. So far, during the George Bush's presidency, the Berlin Wall had fallen, which for most people that symbolized the end of the Cold War. George Bush also sent in an additional 2,000 more troops to Panama to assist the original 2,000 troops that Reagan sent in to remove the president of Panama. Bush was also dedicated to curb the deficit that was left over by his predecessor, and Bush also continued the war on drugs. George H.W. Bush is now the current President of the United States. I'd like to thank you all at home for tuning in to watch us both. My name is Jacob D'Andrea.
And I'm Victor Kim, and have a happy new year.
And thank you for watching Mox News.